I say this as somebody who ran against him in the primary. It is now time to make sure we elect that commander-in-chief. And so my announcement today, and I think every Republican candidate, honestly, at the national level should follow, is that, look, for any super PAC or C4 or whatever entity that supported me during that campaign, I'm publicly calling on them to use their resources to support Donald J. Trump in his re-election effort.
All right, folks, so it certainly has not been a great past couple of days to be a neocon within the Republican Party, and you certainly love to see it. But what I find to be especially comical about it all is the way Vivek Ramaswamy seemingly predicts exactly what is going to happen, right? Because for the record, I don't think he's necessarily controlling or pulling the strings behind the scenes of a lot of this stuff, although it is a funny conspiracy theory to think about, right? How much influence does Vivek have over Nikki Haley or neocon donors, or really even Ronna McDaniel, although perhaps he does deserve some credit for bringing the issue of her to the public eye within the base, right? But the dominoes continue to fall here around Nikki Haley. We just got the news today that Ronna McDaniel now officially will be stepping down as RNC chair, and I'm going to show you why the timing of all of this is kind of funny and masterful on Vivek's part. But let's start with the Nikki Haley news, because obviously we just came off of the South Carolina primary, and that was an election that Donald Trump won by over 20 points. And now Nikki Haley is coping about it, right? Because you would think, okay, you lost Iowa, you lost New Hampshire, you lost South Carolina, and the path is not looking any better for you, right? Super Tuesday, those three were the states you had the best shot in, because now you look forward to Super Tuesday, you are getting crushed in all of the polls. But as everyone knows, and nobody's really surprised by, Nikki Haley is doing this thing where she is refusing to drop out, and she's saying, guys, only 3 states have voted. We still have 47 to go. Actually, sorry, 4 states have voted. We still have 46 to go. But, you know, she's still trying to run the campaign for reasons nobody exactly understands. But check this out. This was at CPAC right before the South Carolina primary, and Vivek goes out and says, I am publicly calling. Basically, what he's really saying here is, I am calling for the people still backing Nikki Haley to just give up and stop spending their money. And we will show you in a second that right after this, the people backing Nikki Haley are now giving up and are no longer spending their money. But check out what he said. He says, I'm publicly calling on any super PACs and outside efforts that supported me over the past year to use leftover funds to help elect Donald J. Trump. And he says this, which is obviously a shot at Nikki Haley. Every other Republican candidate who ran for president should do the same. Okay, so take a listen to what he said at CPAC. I think this was Friday or Saturday, right before the South Carolina primary.
I say this as somebody who ran against him in the primary. It is now time to make sure we elect that commander-in-chief. And so my announcement today, and I think every Republican candidate, honestly, at the national level should follow, is that, look, for any super PAC or C4 or whatever entity that supported me during that campaign, I'm publicly calling on them to use their resources to support Donald J. Trump in his re-election effort. And I want every other Republican candidate who ran for president to do the same thing, because we are not working with a lot of time here. If my kids are in high school before we get this right, I don't think we have a country left. That's not exaggeration.
Okay, so he said that. And, you know, again, I'm not making the claim that Vivek is the reason for this, but the timing did add up, right? So right after the South Carolina primary, we got the announcement that one of the major groups backing Nikki Haley, which is Americans for Prosperity, and they're basically like a libertarian think tank. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they have ties to the Koch brothers, but it's somewhere along those lines, right? Just in, Americans for Prosperity will stop spending money on Nikki Haley's presidential campaign. A senior advisor said, we don't believe any outside group can make a material difference to widen her path to victory. And that is true, right? No outside or internal group can do anything at this point. It's a runaway train in terms of Donald Trump getting the nomination. Nikki Haley is just running this entire thing to waste everyone's time. But I do have to beg the question, what is going on at this point, right? Because I think a lot of people have made the argument that, well, Nikki Haley's going to continue this campaign to because she's getting paid to do it. You know, she's corrupt, and I obviously I agree she is corrupt. She is money driven. We know her history with Boeing. I virtually guarantee you that after this is all over, she will go to be a lobbyist or sit on another board of a defense industry, but do something like that in the private sector, right? Where she can use her political reputation to enrich herself in some private corporation, you know, outside of the political sphere. But you also have to ask the question, so if Americans for Prosperity is pulling out, and we did get the news on Sunday and Monday right after the primary that they are far from the only major donors who are going to give up on Nikki Haley here, again, like, what is the point of this? You know, what is she, and even logistically, even if she wants to be stubborn and all of that, with what money is she going to continue running this campaign on? Of course, nobody really knows, but I do find it to be pretty hilarious that Nikki Haley wants to do the girl boss thing. Hey, I'm going to stay in. I'm going to keep fighting. And all the major donors, again, this is why I say that this past couple of days has been a series of neocon L's is, well, even the donors, even the neocon donors who are backing her are saying, nope, it just doesn't make sense. There's no point to this. We are simply wasting money. And this, of course, backs in with the fact that after New Hampshire, you also had her liberal donors like Reid Hoffman, right? That's the founder of LinkedIn. He is a Biden supporter, right? He was basically just giving Nikki Haley funds, hoping that she would sabotage Trump. He saw the result there and said, well, I guess it's not going to happen. Stop giving her any money. And again, like, what is she doing at this point? And where is she going to raise money? Is she going to just start scamming middle-class families off of the hope that, hey, you suburbanites who like me and you make like 80 grand a year or something, keep giving me your money for no reason? I don't know. Again, I don't know where she's going to get the money to keep running this campaign. I'd have to imagine, honestly, that by Super Tuesday and especially beyond, she's basically going to be a skeleton of a candidate, right? She will be on the ballot, but she's not going to be able to really organize a ground game, events, campaign ads on TV, anything like that. And it again begs the question, what exactly is she doing this for? And my good friend Red Eagle Politics actually made a great point about this, and the stupidity of Bird Brain here is that if she is just staying in this to spite Trump, to sabotage Trump, to do whatever, he makes the point that Haley has reached a point where she is draining more resources from Biden than Trump by staying in the race. Okay. And you're wondering how it is exactly does that make sense? Well, if you're Donald Trump, you know, now that South Carolina is over, you can basically pivot to the general election. You know, he really doesn't have to try that hard on Super Tuesday. He's already winning big. And don't get me wrong, you want security. So I definitely agree. You should still, you know, run a little bit of a campaign, but you know, you can save the majority of your stuff now for the general election. Arguably, you could still run Super Tuesday, but make the messaging more so about the general, right? You know, vote for us on Super Tuesday so we can strengthen our momentum going into November, right? And someone says, I'm curious, explain because of the donors. And Red Eagle brings up a great point here, which is, yes, her biggest donors at this point are all people who would never give money to Trump in the first place and just want to cause chaos within the GOP. And when you consider that fact, you realize, wow, it's actually true. That is how stupid she is right now, which is she's actually hurting Biden more. Because think about this for a second, right? If you know, maybe in last October, you were undecided about who the GOP nominee would be. But think about that for a moment. If you were still funding and backing Nikki Haley now, after South Carolina, you're not going to give any money to Trump. You're probably not going to be voting for Trump to begin with. You are going to be voting for Biden. So when you really think about it, especially in terms of whatever donors, I don't know if they exist, but whatever donors are still left behind Nikki Haley, think about it. Would they ever donate to Trump come general election? Absolutely not. Again, maybe a couple months ago, yes. But if you're still trying to back Nikki Haley at this point, all it comes down to is you're trying to sabotage Trump, and more likely than not, you're going to be donating to Joe Biden in November. And we certainly know that a lot of the Nikki Haley voters are just like that, right? They are going to vote for Biden in November. You think about this too. Many of those crossover voters who, are voting for Nikki Haley, and Nikki Haley uses them to claim, I'm more electable because I can win Democrats, I can win independents. What people miss and forget about that is, yes, it is true that, sure, some of them maybe are in the middle and they would vote for Nikki but not Trump. But in a lot of those cases, they are actually just hardcore Democrats who see that, okay, the Democratic primary is decided. We have an incumbent already. So I'm going to vote for Nikki to spite Trump. And this is all to say that actually come November, hypothetically, if Nikki was the nominee, her case that she can win Democrats, she can win independents actually would not hold true, because the coalition she has built over the case of this GOP primary would not translate, right? Because those people are going to be voting for Biden. They're just voting for Haley as a spite to Trump because, they're basically just trying to waste people's votes, waste their own votes, right? And the same is, of course, true there of the donors. And that, sums up to why, again, I come back to this idea. I really can't answer the question as to why Nikki Haley is still doing this besides her own ego, because it can't really be about money if she's losing all the money. And even her play here to spite Trump or sabotage Trump, as he brings up here, it's actually not working, because she is at this point diverting more money and resources from donors that would give to Joe Biden than she is to Donald Trump. So the whole thing is just kind of hilarious to see. And again, it is kind of funny that Vivek 24 hours before says, I'm calling for all these super PACs and orgs to pull their money out of, basically, he's saying pull out of Nikki Haley. And then what happens? They pull out of Nikki Haley. It's hilarious to see, but it does not just end there, because we've talked about this before. But we can now finally officially announce and celebrate the news that RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel has announced her resignation. So she is officially stepping down. We talked about that a couple weeks ago because, it was rumored and basically confirmed that it was going to happen. But you now have Ronna Romney McDaniel, who, forget her last name, honestly, forget even the politics surrounding her, was just not good at her job. And arguably, to me, that was the biggest problem with her, right? Because, the RNC chair doesn't need to be the most ideological, purist person. Basically the job of the RNC chair is to make sure that Republican candidates can A, raise money, and B, win elections. And when you look at her record, she simply was just not good at any of those things, nor was she good at PR, right? Because look, you can attack me for this take, but it's sort of like pragmatic, it's sort of Machiavellian, but honestly, the way I see it, if she was the RNC chair, and no one really likes her, she's a Romney, her politics are questionable, but she made sure that all of our people were winning elections, right? She's good at talking to donors, she was good at organizing resources, then I would say, it's fine. We could have her there. She's not an elected official. She's not dictating policy. But again, she was not good at that, because when you look at 2018, 2020, 2022, the off-year elections last year, in Kentucky and stuff like that, she was just not good at her job. And currently in the state that it's in, she basically has bankrupted the RNC, right? She's not good at handling money or doing any of that stuff. So long story short, totally incompetent at the actual substance of her job. And it's certainly great news to see now that, going into November, the curse of her is lifted, right? We're no longer going to have her leadership in terms of the presidential or down ballot elections. But I will remind everyone that this was a big sort of talking point of Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign, which is Ronna McDaniel is incompetent. She needs to step down. And as we close out this video here, let me just remind everyone of that and play this wonderful clip of him talking about her and her leadership one more time.
Why should you be the nominee and not the former president?
I think there's something deeper going on in the Republican Party here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party. Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We'd have 10 times the viewership, asking questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party. You think the Democrats, and we've got Kristen Welker here, do you think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, I mean, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years, was that real or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
Mr. Ross.
This is how we get our country back. We need accountability because this media rigged the 2016 election. They rigged the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
and they're going to rig this election.
Your time is up.
Accountability.
Let me turn to Governor Christie. Why?
Right, and you remember at the time, I think Ronna McDaniel sat in that stage and was like, he's never going to get any money from us, and she was so defensive about it, and a lot of people thought at the time, that is career suicide for Vivek Ramaswamy. You know, you can't cross the RNC chair, and then, you know, look what has happened. Look what has happened since, right? Who, in the end, really came out on top between the two of them? The answer there is obvious, right? I mean, again, I'm not even necessarily saying that Vivek is the single only reason why Ronna McDaniel was pushed out of power. I think, honestly, it has a lot more to do with the fact that at the current moment, the RNC is basically bankrupt and out of money. But you also can't deny that the public pressure campaign on her, right? Because there's the private pressure in terms of within the RNC, the internal stuff, you know, I think that has more to do with Trump and, you know, again, the internal people in the RNC than Vivek. But there's also the public side of it, which is, you know, openly make her unpopular with the base. I would argue she was already a little bit unpopular before, but this really brought it all to the public eye. But again, folks, to summarize today's video, it just has not been a great past couple of days to be a neocon in the GOP. Their candidate, Nikki Haley, is now soon going to be out of money. Ronna McDaniel no longer running the RNC. Folks, to quote internet Gen Z slang, I'm thinking we might be back. Okay, we might just be a little bit back. And I certainly like our chances a lot more in November now because of all of this recent news. With that said, folks, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, Alpha Moves Only, God bless, have a very great rest of your day, and peace.